We play and call it work.
Hey everybody, Matthew here from MiniWargaming.com, and welcome to this week's Sit and Talk, our show where we sit down and we answer your questions about whatever it is that you've left questions about. And we rotate, of course, who is doing these. If you're new to this, then you'll not know and need to know that next week is Josh's turn. I apologize that this is a week late. There was some miscommunication about whose turn it was, and so I didn't film it last week. So still have all your questions though, so I'll answer it from the last time when Steve did his. So next week will be Josh. So if you want to leave questions for him, you can do that in the comments below, whether here on YouTube or here on MiniWargaming.com, wherever you happen to be watching this. And then we'll do our best to answer them. Of course, we have a choice of whether we want to answer them or not, and sometimes there's duplicates and all that kind of stuff. And I'll flip back and forth between comments on MiniWargaming.com and comments over on YouTube as well. And I'm going to grab a pencil, and that way I can cross them off and maybe do them randomly. I'll just try to get through all of them. How about that? I usually try to take about an hour to do this. So I'm just going to jump right into it. And remember, next week is Josh. And yeah, let's just jump right into it. JPayne94. Hi Matt, despite being a Vault member, I watch all the free content on YouTube so I can give the video a thumbs up. Just curious, is this helpful? Anything else we can do that's more helpful for the YouTube metrics and monetization? Well, thank you very much for asking that question, because that's awesome. I'm glad that you're willing to support us. We can't know exactly how the YouTube algorithms work, but from what we understand, the more interaction a video gets, the more engagement a video gets, then the more it will be shown in recommended feeds. And then, of course, the more likely it is to get more views and everything. So any interaction is good. I think, don't quote me on this, but I seem to remember reading or watching videos about how the fact that even thumbs down will help a video because it's interaction, right? It's incited emotion from somebody. They've come on, they've done it, and that can actually help. From what I understand, the biggest metrics that determine whether YouTube will show your YouTube video in a recommended feed or in related videos, like to basically give it a higher chance of being shown, is watch time is a big deal. So if all you do is open the video, watch it for 10 seconds and then close it, that doesn't really help, because YouTube actually is like, oh, people aren't interested in this video, because when they go to watch it, they don't watch very long. And so watching through the whole video is quite useful. I'm not going to tell you to go and watch our videos just to get us a boost in our metrics. If you're asking though, I'll just basically, let's treat this like a lesson on, if you're a YouTuber, what kind of metrics should you care about. So watch time is probably one of the biggest metrics, because it tells YouTube that your video is engaging, and also it keeps eyes on YouTube. That's their goal, right? Is they want to keep people watching YouTube videos so they can serve them more advertisements. And there's nothing wrong with that goal, because the product is free, so they have to make money somehow. Any engagement is good. So if you subscribe while watching a video, if you thumbs up, thumbs down, if you leave a comment, if you share, all those things go into the metrics as well. I'm not sure how much those ones affect it compared to everything else. I just know that they do have an effect on it as well. And so that's the best ways you can do it. Obviously, sharing the video with any of your friends that would be interested, or in groups on Reddit or anywhere else where it's not spamming, where you cannot, you legitimately, I wouldn't want you to just go and every time we post a video, just share it in a group. It's more like, hey, I really liked this one. I liked how they did the Harlequin list. And so would you guys do Harlequin list this way? Like, that's kind of the stuff that if you're a YouTuber, you need to share your videos in a contextual way, not just in a blatant spammy way. That doesn't really have any positive effect, and can even have negative effects on your branding and on people being interested in what you do. So yeah, those are the best things to help with that. Obviously, turning ad blockers off is going to be helpful in helping us to monetize the videos. So that's always a good thing to do as well. But that's a great question. Thank you very much for the fact that you're willing to think about us and support us like that. I know it's not uncommon to hear Vault members be like, what else can I do? And we've thought about that question a lot of times, and we've even we have ideas of how we can introduce maybe even higher level Vault memberships and what that would entail, and where you can still, the low level memberships get you all of our content, or at least most of our content. And then these are more like supporter levels. It'll take us a bit of time to implement any of those ideas. But if there's anything that you're thinking of, if you're like, yeah, I would totally support you in this way, like if you had a membership at this level, or like a choose your own price membership, or if you had a patron, or if you'd put this merch in your store, if there are things that you'd like, then send me an email. Matthew at miniwargaming.com. And obviously, if I see a ton of people saying, yeah, I would totally take this, then that would obviously inspire me to work on that and roll that out sooner. And it's great, because anything that kind of builds up mini wargaming, like obviously we're a corporation, we're trying to turn a profit, but I'm trying to turn a profit for a purpose, which is to feed our families and to employ more people. It's not like a greedy corporation that needs to make money. It's like, no, every corporation needs to make money so that they can operate. And so the more of a profit we turn, the more money we can reinvest into the business as well, expanding and getting you guys more content and increasing the quality of the content that we already create too. So all of that is possible mainly because of our Vault members. And all our YouTube viewers help that as well. But the majority of the revenue comes through our Vault members. But yeah, when you look at helping us on the YouTube videos, that generates more exposure, which then gets more people into the Vault. So even though it's going to only generate more free exposure, it's basically helping us with our lead generation. Sika, or Chica. Hi Matt, 40K is a dystopian nightmare. Yeah. Do you think the lore does a good job of not just presenting that, but actually reflecting it? And should it? Well, it depends on the lore that you're reading. I don't think it would be accurate to just qualify or to categorize 40K as a dystopian nightmare, mainly because it's been around long enough that they've developed so many different parts of the universe. So like if you get heavy into the chaos stuff, you definitely get the dystopian nightmare, the nightmarish realm of all that kind of stuff. You can get really, some of the novels can really get you into that. And then other novels will get you into the more heroic side of things, right? If you read some of the Horus Heresy novels, they can be more heroic. The Beast Arises series doesn't feel like a nightmarish dystopian future. It feels more like a typical fantasy. You know, there's a big bad guy with a big army, and you know, you got to figure out a way to beat it. And that's much more heroic, and that's cool too. So the thing I really like about 40K lore is that the galaxy is big enough for a lot of different kinds of stories. You want to go deep under a single hive city like Necromunda and tell the stories about brutal gang warfare? Well, you got that. You want to get more lighthearted and have a bunch of orcs running around in Mad Max style? You got Gorka Morka. Like, as much as that's not supported as a game, the concept is still there. Orcs can be goofy, but they can also be scary. You've got Tyranids, which are like that, you know, swarming species, and you got the Genestealer cult and the Chaos cults, which are the insidious organizations that infiltrate in and kind of destroy a society from the inside out. You've got the Tau, who have this noble cause, but kind of underneath you're wondering, are they really good guys? Because, you know, if you don't join them, then they'll force you to join them. They come all peacefully, and it's like, no, you don't want to join us? Okay, well, here's the armies. Now you have to. And that's just kind of, you know, oh, you're not really the good guys anymore if you're going to force people to join you. And you know, if as far as a greater good or something like that, you can still have those. You can have those interesting philosophical arguments, right? It allows us to explore any good universe allows us to explore human nature and morality and ethics and heroics and good versus evil, or just plain old different themes. And 40K really has a lot of that. It definitely kind of starts in the grim, dark, gothic, nightmarish, dystopian, post-apocalyptic horror. And I think that grittiness is its appeal. And then, like any other universe that exists for long enough, you can explore different things of it, right? Like you look at the Star Wars or Star Trek universe, the longer, it's basically the only way to really fully create a fleshed out universe is to take time to do it. Like if you were to come up with a cool new universe right now, you can't possibly as a single person come up with a universe as full of ideas. Like it takes time. Like think about the dozens and dozens, the hundreds of authors who have contributed to Star Wars and Star Trek and Black Library and all of that. And little by little, some of it, you know, is no longer canon, but it doesn't matter, because even the stuff that Disney will say is no longer canon for Star Wars, or somebody else will no longer say is canon for Marvel, or all these different things, it doesn't matter, because they already serve their purpose to kind of develop ideas of what the universe can look like and can feel like. Whether or not those events even happened or not, or they're in an alternate universe, it doesn't matter. Same thing with comic books. And that's what's fascinating. So any lore that's been around for a long time typically, and is popular, typically has some really good core ideas to it, and then a lot of really neat fleshed out things. This was, okay, so continue your comment. This is one of the things I really liked about your Blue Collar Heresy series. It was still fairly lighthearted and fun, but it went a small bit further than most things, not just mini wargaming, into the mundane awfulness of the setting. That was the idea of Blue Collar Heresy, right? It's like, we always talk about the Space Marines and the high level stuff, right? That really are uncommon. what would it be like just to go down to the blue collar level? And that was the inspiration for that whole series. Slanesh aside, has there been any lore that made you uncomfortable while reading it? Oh yeah, when I read the Eisenhorn series, it came to a torture scene, and I actually stopped reading it because I just couldn't get through that. It's one, I don't mind the idea that torture happens in fantasy settings. Torture's horrible. Lots of horrible things happen. It's when they explicitly talk about how it's happening and the gory details, and it's like, I'm uncomfortable with that. I'm not trying to judge anybody or anything, although I am at the same time, but I'm not going to try to say, if you like that, then you're a horrible person. I'm just saying that that I don't enjoy that, and so that made me uncomfortable. And so, yeah, I stopped reading the Eisenhorn series because of that, which is too bad because it was a really good series. Maybe one day I'll go back to it and just kind of skip over that part and keep going, but it really turned me off to it. I would be particularly interested in Imperial examples, as they are often framed as the heroes, or at least the point of view characters. The Hunting the Fallen campaign has been great so far. Keep up the good work. Can't wait to see the Crusade. Well, thank you. Dr. McCoy. Hi, Matt. I am what you call an infrequent wargamer, as I tend to hobby on and off. Recently, I've been thinking about how I'd like to support mini wargaming, considering my watching habits. I tend to watch Age of Sigmar battle reports, but because I'm not interested in 40K, and I don't hobby all the time, I haven't felt the need to sign up for a monthly Vault membership. I get it. Especially when I'm paying for things like Netflix. Because of this, a once-off purchase for specific battle reports is an attractive idea for me. I liked what you did with the recent narrative campaign, where a canceled membership would still give you access to the campaign's battle report coverage. If the option was there instead to buy coverage in an Age of Sigmar campaign for a set price, I'd happily jump on that. Please, Matt, what I'm saying is that I'll literally pay you to make a narrative AOS campaign. I'm working on one right now, by the way. That is an idea that we've had in the past and we want to do. It's implementation that's a little expensive, and that doesn't mean we're not going to do it. It just means that that we've got to figure out a way to do it in such a way that we just got to do it. It's really what it comes down to. Yeah, it's busy here. Life is busy right now. We're filming like crazy. We're working on expanding. And this is not me trying to make excuses. We're just trying to be like, it's stuff. Home life is very busy right now. Everybody's I have 4 kids all doing online learning. And so there's very little space, and we're just trying the best we can. And I think we're doing not doing a decent job of trying to create the stuff that you guys like. But yeah, this is an idea we've had multiple times, and I think what we could always do is just make it simpler. Is like, when we make a campaign, we could just make it a digital download available, like on our Shopify store. That might be a simple way to do it, right? So you go on there, you spend you can't, because what I want to do is I want it to be available through our miniwargaming.com website, where you're on the page and you're like, yes, I'd like this, and just like you would like on iTunes or something, or you just like, yes, select, and your credit card's already stored, and away you go. That's like the best case scenario, but that's a bit of costly implementation. And I know how to do it. It's just finding the time to do it. Whereas Shopify, our shop.miniwargaming.com, our merch store, I've already found mods to it where I can just install the mod, and then I can give it digital files. And although there's limitations to, and that's not a problem. I can give it digital files basically, and I can sell those digital files, and then people just pay for it. So I just got to do that. Would you guys pay for that? Obviously, a lot of people watching this are probably Vault members, but for our non-Vault members out there, would that be something that you'd want to do? Like the Hunting the Fallen narrative campaign, once it's done, we basically package it up as a digital download, and then you can purchase it, and then you download it. Is that something that you'd be interested in? Because if we have enough people that want to do that, it's not hard to add it to our Shopify store, so that you guys can make those purchases. I don't know why we don't just do that. I know why we don't, because we're just so busy that there's always something else that takes priority, but that's something that we should do. So thank you for the poke, the prod, because that's a good idea. Griff Gang, hey Matt, very excited for the 5-player Crusade at Mini Wargaming. I was wondering if you and the team might consider recording the progress of your growing forces. Yeah, that's what they're doing. It's actually 4-player. I'm not part of that one. I don't really want to be, but that's fine, because the 4 of them are going to take care of that. I'm not sure if it's too late in the game, but I would love to see small vids or social media posts between each week of videos on each force's progress. Yeah, their plan is to do this long term and buy up the stuff and make videos about their selections and all of that. So I don't know exactly all of their plans for it, because that's Dave's baby, but I know that they want to do that. Gay Rage 1812. Hi Matt, question about anxiety in the hobby. I collect Beasts of Chaos and I absolutely love them, but it's hard knowing that their rules make them a little obsolete. I know, ask Steve, he knows. I get concerned that Games Workshop hasn't updated their rules or models in some time because they are planning on disbanding the army, either by axing them completely or making them a sub-faction of Slaves of Darkness. I'll still have my gorgeous models, which I know is all I should really expect from a Games Workshop purchase, but I'm worried I'll feel disillusioned if my wondered Beastie Boys are phased out. Yeah, no, I get it. I totally get it. I don't think that's going to happen with the Beasts of Chaos. Their model range is newish enough, and I think they're interesting enough that it's just a matter of you working with an old Battletome right now. As a Genestealer Cult and Tyranid player, do you have these same anxieties around the hobby? How do you deal with them? Keep up the great work. Well, I'm not worried for Genestealer Cults and Tyranids. They're not going anywhere. But I totally get it, because we've had it happen to lots of stuff we have too, especially when Fantasy switched over to Age of Sigmar, and eventually they Legends a bunch of stuff. And so then we had a bunch of models just sitting there doing nothing. So eventually we actually put them back on a square basis, and now they use them when they play Fantasy. And that sucks. Like for us, it didn't hurt as much because we have a huge collection, but I could see if you're just somebody building up a force, like if you're a Space Marine player and you had built up a really cool force and they came with the Primaris, I could see how that would be a kind of the kick in the butt, right? Or it's just like, oh, come on. I spent thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours doing this, and now you're just making them obsolete. Now I know since then they've kind of corrected that, and firstborn miniatures can work just fine. But there was a good long period where it was pretty clear what the agenda was. That it's like, here's the new models, which are clearly just bigger tacticals, but we want to call them something different so that you have to buy new stuff rather than just saying, well, I've already got that, I'll just rebase them. But then I know they then fleshed out the whole Primaris range, which makes me wonder if that was their intent all along, or if that was more just like, hey, this works so well, let's keep expanding it. Because the other Primaris models aren't just bigger versions of the other ones. Like they do have some more uniqueness to them, for the most part. And so I can see though how that would just suck. That would just horribly suck and feel a bit like a bit of a betrayal, which is a funny thing to say. It's a company trying to make money, but that doesn't mean that they should purposely make something obsolete. Like I know they do that all the time, right? But it's not quite as so overt and so large scale as to be like, now all of your firstborn stuff is pretty garbage because now we have the new repulsors and that can't for some reason carry tacticals. I don't know why it can't. And your rhinos can't carry Primaris. It's like, well, why not? We can cram 10 tacticals in there. Why can't we put 8 Primaris in there who are slightly bigger, or 5 Primaris or something like that? And it's like they're just so not compatible with each other that it's just a little too obvious, I think. So I can see how that would kind of tick you off, and it would tick me off too. We're a little proofed against that because of just the economy of scale, that we buy so many more miniatures than the average person and have such a larger collection that we don't feel those hits quite as much, but I totally get it. I would feel the same way. Benny, 319. Hi, Matt. Hope you are well. I am. As a big fan of the Imperial Fist and the Legacy of Dorne, I was wondering if you ever thought about doing a Last Wall Protocol narrative campaign. Love the work you all do, especially the narrative missions. Thanks, Brendan. I haven't thought of that. Doesn't mean it won't happen. The reason I did the Hunting the Fallen one, the Dark Angels one, is because Steve has just wanted to do Dark Angels campaign for so long. And so with the new Crusade system out and reading the new Dark Angels book and how they did their Crusade system, that gave me all the stuff I needed in order to come up with the idea of how I would do this, combined with my idea of wanting to do a Dawn of War style campaign where it's like pick your own and choose your own adventure kind of stuff. But really the reason it was Dark Angels is because Steve was like, I really love the Dark Angels lore. And so that's what it takes usually for me to do something, is one of the other guys are just like, oh, I love this lore. And it's like, okay, well, let me read into that, because I would like to harness that enthusiasm, right? Ban Ray, Dear Matthew, GW has just revealed the models for Gaunt's Ghost they will be releasing. Would you consider doing a narrative campaign around them or loosely based on them? Maybe. It's hard with that kind of thing because, what if one of them dies? Like, how do you replace it with another model? That kind of thing. Like, oh, here's a new recruit, but we don't have a model for him, so maybe. And all these questions happen, of course, before the Age of Sigmar 3rd edition reveal happens. So I know that there would be even more questions on here about that if I had done the sit and talk last week. So I'm sure you'll have lots of questions going forward, but we can talk about that later. Kildima, when do you think Vulcan is coming back and getting a model from Games Workshop? Well, he already has a model for Horus Heresy, so it's not crazy to think that he can get one for 40K. But I haven't heard any rumors of Vulcan coming back, so I have no idea. Yeah, I really don't know. Axiomatic Alex. Hey Matthew, I'm the guy who asked about the Chaos Corrupted Sisters last time. It's for a narrative campaign later when the actual sisters will have to face their flaws in a corrupted shrine. which ties into my question for this video. If you could build any custom themed narrative army, think Days, Khorne, Orcs, what would it be? Well, I'm actually building one right now. Well, not me personally, because I don't enjoy that aspect of the hobby, but I have a painter who's working on a very custom Space Marine chapter for me. It's a 2,000 point army of the last of a chapter. It was inspired from the Belisarius Call novel, The Great Work. They're customized like crazy to have Tyranid bits all over them and to have wear and tear to show that they haven't been able to maintain their equipment. And it's a ragtag firstborn Space Marine army, and I'm super looking forward to that. I'm going to use it in narrative stuff and all of that. Personally, I'm about to start my human soldiers liberating themselves from Tau colonization and using looted Tau tech to go on a crusade against the Xenos to hopefully gain forgiveness in the Emperor's eyes. That's awesome. I love that. I love that. Vasanoctum. Hey, have you guys ever tried like a clear matte spray on the dice to eliminate the glare? I don't think you should. I don't know if you want to do that. I tried my best to get the right angle, and different dice have different problems with that. Smooth Dave, dear Matt, loving the Dark Angel campaign. I was wondering where the walls and doors came from in the space station game with the Gene Stealers. Those are Zone Mortalis tiles from Forge World. I don't think they sell them anymore, but maybe they do. But they are Zone Mortalis from Forge World. Hearn the Hunter, what will it get to take some salamander love? Somebody to play them. Sorry, I know that's not the answer you want. JD Grimm, some great comments from Steve during this one. I hope you find your Beastman army someday. Don't really have a question for Matthew, but did want to compliment him and the rest of Mini Wargaming for the excellent narrative campaigns that have been put out lately. Well, thank you. I'm really hoping that a steady stream of narrative-driven bat reps are planned for the upcoming months, especially bigger storylines like the current Dark Angels campaign. Lots of plans. Working on them right now, actually. Sabini, hi Matthew. I notice a lot of 40k armies take inspiration from history. Ultramarines, ancient Rome. Tau a bit of British and French and Dutch colonials. List goes on. Ancient Egypt for Necrons. My question is, what ancient or historical civilization do you think could make for a great inspiration for a 40k army that isn't already utilized? I don't know. I'm not much of a history buff, I'll tell you that much. What stands out to me? It's tough sometimes to incorporate history into things without it becoming reductive. And especially in this day and age where people are maybe a little more easily offended than they used to be. A lot more political correctness, and you have to be careful, especially if it's a culture that still exists. Like, you look at like a lot of the Space Marine chapters will do that, right? And they've changed it, of course. It's a product of its time, made in the 80s and 90s. You see, like the Age of Sigmar Stormcast Eternals, you can see that what Space Marines would have been if they were created now. That there's women and men in it. That there's all sorts of nationalities in there, and it's not like each storm host isn't based around a singular historical thing. It's more based around a theme. And I think that's what I would do going forward with them. If I were to start Space Marines from scratch, I wouldn't just base it off of that. Not that I wouldn't base any visuals off of it, because obviously there's still those historical visuals on the Stormcast Eternals, but it's more just like the cultural things. Yeah, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, anyway. Phantom Baz. Hey Matt, how's things? I was wondering, good, thank you. I was wondering, would it be possible for you, Mini Wargaming, to do the Broken Realms AOS narrative games? There's so much around these books, and it's changing the realms, the adding new lore, new character, great battles, and amazing stories. I'd love to see that come to life in Mini Wargaming. I'm not a big fan of like taking the campaigns they put in the books and just doing them, because they're essentially you're doing historical gaming, and I'm not a fan of recreating somebody else's story. But what I will do in the next Age of Sigmar narrative campaign is definitely use the setting and the stuff that has happened and have that influence what's going to be happening in the campaign. So in a sense, I'll definitely be using the Broken Realm stuff, but not like recreating the stuff that happened in Broken Realms. More like letting the consequences of what happened in Broken Realms be in my next narrative campaign. Dassine 753. Hi Matt, love the work you and everyone at Mini Wargaming does every week. As a fellow Gloomspite Gits player, how do you think they would fare against Sons of Behemoth? They can do well. I've been wondering if 60 Grots with Fanatics could take down a Mega Gargant. Any chance we could see a David vs. Goliath AOS game soon? You can outswarm the Giants are not the most powerful thing in Age of Sigmar, simply because they don't have hardly any shooting. And so you can outmaneuver them. You can place things in their way. You feed them small units, right? Like, it's almost better not to give them 60 Grots, but to give them 20, or to give them 5 of something else, because then they're forced to stop and deal with those paltry things while you grab objectives, or maybe pick off the Giants one at a time. So it's more about that kind of thing. But yeah, 60 grots with the right support have plenty of attacks, and could take down a giant for sure. And the giant also has enough damage to be able to take out a lot of those 60 grots, but that's not a big deal because points-wise, your 60 grots are still cheaper than that giant. So you have a lot of support other than them, whether it's in Mangler Squigs or Trolls or another 60 grots, whatever happens to be. So yeah, I think the Gloomspite Kits could play against the giants just fine. To Thesis, hey Matt, when are you gonna paint those skeletons? Oh, you mean the ones in my house? No, I don't know. I don't know, man. Steel Nymph. All right, Matt, simple question. When are we gonna get more Battletech? I've actually gotten back into playing with my son at home. I don't know if you'll ever get any here. Well, I can't say ever. Not in the near future. It's not something that's on the radar. I've been getting more into Battlefield Gothic now. There's some other games I want to get into as well. But Battletech is fun. Less simple. Which do you prefer, full Battletech rules or simplified Alpha Strike rules? I haven't actually tried the Alpha Strike rules before, so I can't say. But from what I've seen, I don't think I'd have a preference over the two. I think they both perform different functions. Alpha Strike lets you play larger games of Battletech, but it takes away the nuanced, like the small amounts of damage and where it goes and all that kind of stuff, which I would miss. But I wouldn't want to play the regular Battletech rules at a larger scale because then you'd just be playing forever. So I think if I wanted to play large-scale Battletech, I'd want to learn the Alpha Strike rules. And if I just wanted to play like one lance on one lance, then regular Battletech rules work really well for that because it gives you the gritty, the crunchiness. And I enjoy that crunchiness to a degree. Entropy 1. Hey Matthew, any plans to make bolt action Warhammer Fantasy more regular? Plans? Yeah, it actually is more regular. So Fantasy, we're putting out regularly. Now, it's not like we have a day for Fantasy. Friday is the day where we put out kind of the random stuff like Battlefield Gothic and Fantasy, but Fantasy's been going out on a semi-regular basis. I just can't tell you that it'll be like every other week. It might be a couple times one month, 3 times another month, 1 time another month, but we're still playing it. Bolt Action is, at least for the near future, going to be coming out once every month. We have it planned for next week that we actually have a pairing, so we actually have one for our Vault members as well, whereas last time we had just put out one for free. So yeah, we're planning on covering those games more. It just depends on audience response to it. The very first Bolt Action we put out had a surprisingly large number of views, and so that showed us that there's a surprisingly large number of views. And so that has influenced us to this time that we're putting out to put out 2 and see how many people will go in over to the Vault and sign up for that, or how many Vault members will watch that one. And that'll help us to determine if we're going to do more Bolt Action or not. So yeah, for sure. Also, any chance you can make Luca sing again? I don't know. I'll try. Stormbolter. Hello, Matthew. Hope you and your family are keeping well. We don't really get to see you do any 30K battle reports. Does it not really interest you? And if you were to play again, what army would you be drawn to? I know I'm not particularly interested in right now. Not that it's not a good game. I just haven't felt any compelling reason to want to play it. That's all. Nothing against Horus Heresy, except that it's not getting updated as much as it could be, or not could be or should be, but more like which the audience would like it to be. E.P. Jellian, Matthew, what will it take to get you to paint up and run Empire of Dust for Kings of War? I'm not going to paint up anything, man. Get somebody else to paint up? I don't know. I'm not personally interested in playing Kings of War. Once again, I've never played the game enough, or I've never played the game to really have an opinion on whether it's a good game or not. It's just not my cup of tea. Same thing with Fantasy. It's just like I'm not interested in regimented warfare like that. It's just I played it for a couple editions and it was okay, but I just never was the thing that I really liked. I like Age of Sigmar significantly more. I know, boo, hiss, but I do. Boston, hey Matthew, I've noticed a pattern of no videos on Wednesday for the past few weeks. I don't know if this was announced and I missed it. Is this going to be continued for the release pattern? Monday 40K, Tuesday Age of Sigmar, Wednesday nothing, Thursday campaign, Friday random? Yes. Essentially, we weren't able to keep up. We wanted Wednesdays and Thursdays to always have campaigns going, but that was just proving to be too difficult. So Wednesday is kind of a floating day. When we do have enough campaigns to go out, then Wednesday we'll have a campaign going out. But then when we don't, then it won't. But you can usually guarantee that the rest of the schedule will hold there, barring sicknesses and other things that might throw us off. Flavithad, hey Matthew. Really been liking all the mega campaign stuff lately. It's been really fun to watch. As a D&D dungeon master, I found certain modules campaigns have really made me want to follow stories in that world, and others haven't. Out of all the army campaigns, as opposed to the Death or Death Watch campaigns you've run, which have you felt was the most inspiring? Which campaign has made you want to create more arcs, characters, crossovers, or continuations? That was a word, I promise. So army campaigns, I know what you mean, because we have different styles of campaigns, like the big armies where we're playing 1,500, 2,000 point games, and then the smaller Death Watch ones where it's just like a squad. Or even Hunting the Fallen was more kind of in between those two, because it was like 500 points and 1,000 point games. Big army ones, what was my favorite? I don't know, there's been quite a few that I liked. The Age of Sigmar one that I did with Luca, what was it called? It was when he played Khorne stuff, and he was going for the Storm Vaults. I don't know why I can't remember the name of it. I really liked that one. I don't know if there's continuations to it that I care about. I don't know if there's any right now that are pressing on me. I'm currently working on one with the Hungary Nexus one, where now it's Hunting the Fallen. We're going to do other ones in that same sector, and we're going to kind of complete that story and then move on. That's more of my aspirations now, rather than having this grand MCU kind of thing. It's going to be more like, no, let's just have these 3 or 4 narrative campaigns be linked, and then that can just kind of be done and move on to some other ideas. And that way I can kind of go wherever my inspiration leads me to. So yeah, I'm not quite sure. Stephen, hi Matt, thanks for all the work you and folks at Mini Wargaming do. Well, you're welcome, and thank you. One of my favorite elements of strategy and tactics game is interactive environments, exploding barrels, pools of lava, destructive bridges, hostile wildlife, teleporters, etc. Feels great to counter a powerful army unit with your own weaker unit by creative use of the environment. Sadly, 40K doesn't seem to have a lot of that. Do you think there's a place for more interactive environments, or are they not a great fit for the game? I think there is, but the place is not in large-scale games, because the games are already complex enough, so trying to add in all that extra terrain stuff would just bog down the game. Where it really shines is in smaller scale games that are more thematic, like Necromunda, Gorka Morka, Battlefleet Gothic. Battlefleet Gothic, because there's a planet that you can get pulled into, or there's asteroids you can run into, that kind of stuff. Yes, so there's all sorts of game mechanics, and most ideas for game mechanics, as long as it excites somebody, is probably a good game mechanic. But it doesn't mean it's a good mechanic for any game. The larger the scale game, the simpler you need to keep things. That's just a good rule of thumb. Like it's a dumb idea to take a complex rule set and just play at a larger scale. And same thing, larger scale rule sets boiled down to smaller games usually has a lot of weaknesses as well, because then you don't get the crunchiness that helps the smaller game really feel like it's something, which is why I had to do modifications. Like when we did the Imperial Knight campaign with Josh, I had to change the rules for how Imperial Knights worked and incorporate like Battletech stuff and Adeptus Titanicus ideas, so that it could work on a smaller scale rather than like it's a 2,000 point, there's 5 mechs going around. What if there's just one Imperial Knight walking around? How do you make that feel like it should? And it doesn't work just to use the 40K rules as is for the Imperial Knights, because it's just, it's just too non-crunchy, it's too top level, which is great at 2,000 points or 3,000 points, but not great at 500 points. And so, and they have like the Crusade system, for example, is a good way to kind of modify that. It doesn't quite answer all of the questions, but it does a really good job of at least giving you something. But really you need different games for different levels. Like they've understood that. They have Kill Team to play like a super small squad base game, and the Kill Team's solid. And then you've got 40K, and then they've come out with Apocalypse as a different game, whereas before Apocalypse was just play your games bigger and don't worry about force organization. So I remember being so disappointed in 4th edition when they came with Apocalypse, because I'm like, oh, they're going to come out with a rule set that makes the gameplay faster at larger scale. Nope, just bring more guys, and here's some formations. There was nothing to speed the game up. Whereas the new Apocalypse game, which I don't know if it's really gotten popular anywhere. I don't know if Apocalypse can ever be super popular just because of the scale of the game. That one addresses like, how do we make this game go faster? And so it simplifies the rules even further. So you get Kill Team, lots of rules. You get 40K with less rules, and Apocalypse with even less rules. And that's what you have to do as you scale up. And so if you want exploding barrels and lava pits and that kind of stuff, that belongs at the small scale, at the Kill Team, Necromunda, Gorka Morka kind of scale. But in those games, it shines, and it's really good, and it makes it really interesting. Okay. How are we doing for time? Yeah, we're about halfway in. We're good. How am I doing for these? We might be able to get through most of them. Let's jump to the few ones that were posted on YouTube, because I don't want to those are at the bottom of my list because it's the way I copied and pasted. KP, hey Matt, you seem to have a lot of fun with Iron Jaws. I wondered how you feel about their Savage Brothers. It would be great to see some Bone Splitters. I love the idea of the Bone Splitters. We don't have very many of them, so I need to kind of build up that army. But I really want to play with them, either mix with Iron Jaws and a Great Wall or on their own. Jimmy Ahern, dear Dancing Matthew, was wondering what is your first ever Games Workshop product? Mine was Space Crusade, which then strangely led on to Epic. Keep up the great work. All you guys are great and very entertaining. My very first Games Workshop product was the Lord of the Rings starter set, Mines of Moria. And then a bunch of paints and stuff to paint it all up. That was my very first set. And I remember it fondly, and it was a lot of fun. Lord of the Rings is great. I've kind of been wanting to get back into it lately. It's hard to find the time, but yeah, it's a great game. It's a solid game. I really like it, and I love the lore of Lord of the Rings. David Wasilewski, sorry about that. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Hi Matt, where do you think the Gloomspite Gits are in the meta at the moment? Is the Spider Focus list still viable for Model A competitive play, not actual tournaments? If you want to do the worst thing in Gloomspite Gits, it's the spiders. Sorry, they're cool, but they're the worst thing. Gloomspite Gits, I'm not a tournament player, so I don't know where they are in the meta. All I know is that if I want to, I can play a decent Gloomspite Gits army in this meta here at the offices. And that's all I can really say. What's the meta like here? I know if I wanted to, I can play them up. You can also play them down easily with the spiders, or kind of a mid-level as the trolls. The trolls can be pretty good actually, but nothing's as good as bringing the big hordes of goblins and all of that kind of stuff. A name I unfortunately can't even say because it's in an alphabet that I don't even recognize. Is that Russian? I'm not quite sure. It looks to me, if I were to make them look like English letters, so I'm sorry. Dear Matthew, is it just me, or has Games Workshop been using Age of Sigmar as a safe testing ground for rules and models they want to implement into 40K? No, I think that they've been going back and forth between the two, honestly. That Age of Sigmar introduces rules, and 40K borrows some of those, and then introduces some more. And then I wouldn't be surprised when you see Age of Sigmar 3rd edition to see it incorporate some of the 40K ideas into it as they go back and forth, especially in the scenarios you see that. I'm thinking of streamlined magic and movement phases quite a while ago, command points and faction terrain more recently, and so on. It seems to me as though they would wing it on Age of Sigmar as an already skewed and extreme game, and only pass the rules into 40K if they are successful. Example, no point costs and double turns were not successful. Well, you say that, but double turns are still going to be a thing in 3rd edition, which I'm disappointed by, I will say. Do you also get the same impression? Being a company CEO, you might have a better insight for the reason than I do. Thanks. I think they definitely, like the development teams, if they're not the same people, will take inspiration from each other for sure. I wouldn't go as far as to say that they just kind of don't care about the Age of Sigmar stuff and then they implement what works into 40K. Not at all. I think they greatly care about both of them. So, but they definitely borrow heavily from each other because they're almost the same rule set, right? There's drastic differences in the two rule sets, but at their core, they're pretty much identical. So, Jake Dog, Mr. Matthew, what planet would be the most cost-effective to purchase a house or residence on? And how much would a small house cost on Terra in the year 40K? What planet would be the most cost-effective? Well, that would be an uninhabited one, because nobody would want to live there, and you could probably have it for free. So like Cadia, the few chunks of Cadia still floating around. How much would a small house cost on Terra in the year 40K? Oh, I don't even know if you could buy one unless you're an Imperial noble. I think most of the people are slaves by this point to the Imperium, and they live where they're told to live. So I don't think you can buy a small house. Like I don't even think it's available. Even a condo, you wouldn't be able to own a condo. And then if you do own that stuff, I feel like the economy of 40K is more just like you're either ultra rich and powerful, and so then you get stuff based on that, or you're one of the slaves. And obviously there's a whole a social strata, whatever, I can't remember the word I'm trying to say. There's stuff in between that as well. But you're not going to be able to buy a small house on Terra. Terra has been, it's just all covered, and there's just no more oceans or forests or places to build. There are no small houses. Everything is huge and it's terrible and cool. Jake Dog, Game Master Matthew, when are all the doggos allowed to come into the studio? Maybe bring your dog to work every day and everyone can bring in their puppies. I don't know. I don't have a dog. Don't want one. Dogs are fine, but I don't want to own one. I had them growing up. We had one when we first got married, and I'll never have a dog again. dogs are fine. But I've got kids to take care of, and I don't want the mess. Like, we have a cat, and I already don't even want to have a cat. So, not an animal lover. Thought I was growing up, because we always had a dog growing up. But then as an adult, realized, oh, my parents did all the hard stuff. And I don't want to deal with that. Mikey Egan. I think it was mentioned that some people have dog allergies, so they need to be, okay. So, all right, so that's all people replying to the dog thing. Yep, all right. All the rest of the comments apparently were just replying to the dog question. Nice. Let's go back to the non-YouTube stuff. So back on our website. Spoonface, Matt, absolutely love all the campaign narrative stuff. And looking forward to the other campaigns after the Hungry Nexus. What were your thought process going into setting up such an expansion narrative? Any tips for recreating ourselves, either on a small scale or potentially smaller? What are my thoughts? It's kind of a bit of a crapshoot. I'll just be honest. I kind of just do stuff, and then what sticks, and what inspires me to do more, I do. I'm nobody else's payroll, right? So it's not like there's some producer above me saying you need to do this. So I can just kind of creatively go where I want, which is a nice benefit to being one of the owners. And so if it's just something, I also look at audience response too. So like if the audience didn't seem to really get into it, then it doesn't inspire me. So it's how well it does, views, vault signups, the comments, how much I enjoyed doing it, how much the player that played it enjoyed it as well. And then I just kind of go from there. Sometimes I have stretching narratives, and sometimes it's nice and simple. So it just goes all over the place. So tips for recreating it yourself. It's hard doing it outside of this because, first off, a lot of people can't even get together right now, but putting that aside, people here are paid to do it. And so they got to show up and they got to do it. And so regardless, we'll finish the campaign. We'll get through the whole thing. When you do it with your friends and they start getting bored, then people might start dropping off. So my biggest advice for anybody wanting to do narrative campaigns with their friend is start small. Do something simple, just a few games long, and then you kind of go from there. Smooth Dave. Hey Matt, found you all during the pandemic and love all the stuff you do. Well, thank you. How difficult do you think it would be to create a squats army in 40K using carriage on overlords and fire slayers? I think it would be very difficult, but somebody with the right skills could do it. I love the idea of fitting AOS models into 40K, but the fact that the models have no toughness is my only problem. Any suggestions on a conversion? Yeah, you would just count as. So do you want them to play as Space Marines or do you want to play them as Imperial Guard? Just pick one and just count as. And so you build it that way. It's like, okay, well, I'll build them as here's my Imperial Guard infantry squad. So you have to have 10 guys and you can have a couple special weapons in there. Carriage on Overlords have plenty of the weapons to represent a lot of things that 40K has, so that's not a big deal. So that's what I would do. You just choose an army that you want it to count as, and then kind of build it around that. Voldus the Boldest. Hey Matt, your Hunting the Fallen campaign has been making me want to build something similar to it. Aside from the Crusade missions, I also want to implement missions where 1 to 4 people play characters with D&D style rules to find clues or interrogate the civilians, maybe even have a big boss battle. I plan on using a Grey Knight as a paladin, a Blood Angel as a fighter, Dark Angel Chaplain as a cleric or something, and a Necron Lord as a ranger that will join the cause for a greater enemy. These characters will level up in a Crusade in the D&D setting, keeping the same powers and relics across platforms. That sounds very complex. It might be hard to manage, but if you're into it, then sure. Give me some insight on how you would begin to approach the mesh between the two game styles and how you would implement the weapons and powers into the D&D setting. I do not mind the characters being overpowered. In fact, I'm probably going to add stuff from the books to make my characters fun to play, like all that. Okay. Geez, I don't even know where I'd begin with that. That's a heck of a lot of work you're talking about. I'm not trying to discourage. I'm just trying to say I don't even know where I'd start. The two is forget the systems, for example. Like if you just wanted to role play, first off, you could always use like the Wrath and Glory system or whatever. But let's say you want to use D&D, that's fine. But the problem is like character scale on the table is very different than in a role-playing game. It's much more crunchy in a role-playing game. But on the table, it's like he gets hit by a tank and he's down. He goes down and he dies. Like it can be as simple as that. Whereas when you're playing at the smaller scale, obviously that kind of thing doesn't happen. So that's the hardest part, to be honest. Is are you going to put plot armor on them so they can never die, because the amount of work that you're putting into each of these characters working, if they can't die, then that can take away from some of the fun, even, because you're not worried about your character, so you can do dumb things with it. So I have no idea, I'll be honest. That sounds like a lot of work, and if you're into it, great, you can have a lot of fun doing that. But that sounds like a lot. Scarrock. Hi Matt, first of all, thanks for your work. And also for these sit and talks. I love the background insights they provide. Speaking of background insights, would you mind going a little bit in depth on the metrics and analysis you do on your content? For example, how do you find out what kind of things, example, game universe, length of video, people involved, etc., work with the audience? Do you keep stats? Is there a difference between YouTube and miniwargaming.com? Would you mind sharing some of them, maybe in a separate video? Well, I talked a little bit at the beginning about the YouTube metrics and what prompts us to see how a video is doing or how to get it more exposure. But the main metrics that we look at, we look at a lot of metrics. A lot of it's hard to compare because we're all over the place with the kind of armies we cover. So it's hard to say, yeah, whenever it's Space Marines, it does well. It's like, well, no, if Space Marines just got a new codex, it does well. So we know certain things like if a new book comes out, battle reports with that army tend to do better, which is like a well-duh kind of thing, but we've proven that in the metrics. The main things we look at are just the metrics that YouTube gives you, how much people watch it, how much they interact with it, how much they like it, how much it gets, how the click-through rate on the titles and thumbnails. When it comes to the vault stuff, the two main metrics are quite straightforward. It's how many people signed up for it and how many people watched it in the vault. There's watch time and stuff as well, but we don't have to get quite as crunchy for the vault stuff. Like if we see a ton of people sign up to watch a video, then that tells us something, and that gives us useful information. And if we see a ton of people watching it in the vault, then that tells us something about retention, right? So because if a lot of people are watching it on a regular basis, then it's something we should definitely keep doing because it's what our vault members want. So that's the main idea. It's not too complicated. It can get complex in the analysis, but the basic concepts of it are pretty straightforward. I love your bat reps, but as you said before, the people behind the camera are what makes the content great. So I guess what I'm trying to say is more behind the scenes, please. Greetings from Germany, and thanks again for the content. Miso, Matt, books. You said you like The Expanse, but have you read the book called The Star Is My Destination? Never heard of it. It's often called the best sci-fi book ever written, even better than Dune, and the creators of The Expanse have cited it as a major influence. Have you read any Ian Banks or Alistair Reynolds? They're amazing and very different to other sci-fi. I haven't. How's your D&D campaign going? Finished Stygian Library? We did. We finished Stygian Library. We're now doing the Scrivener's Tale from Candlekeep Mysteries, incorporated into the storyline, of course, that I've been building. I think they're level 13 now. A lot of stuff has just been recently revealed that's kind of opening up the grand story arc that'll lead towards we're going all the way to level 20 with this one. We're critical rolling it. We started at level 1. There's only 2 characters that are still in the group that were there from the beginning of their own characters. One of them was there from the very beginning, and one of them shortly after. All the players are still there. Almost all the players are still there. But yeah, it's just the characters have come and gone, obviously. But the grand story is now rolling out, which is a lot of fun. Yeah, you just said, can you look at the Candlekeep book? Yeah. How do you think the Hungary Nexus went? The campaign was fine. It set up what I want to do, so I'm enjoying more the Hunting the Fallen was great, and what I'm also going to be doing. Do you have any plans for more innovation in upcoming narrative campaigns? I sometimes get sad as the campaigns that I like, example Yagvir and Tor, never seem to get traction. I know, right? Right? That's what I say too. I pour my heart and soul to a concept, and then it's just mediocre success. It's just people love it. Love what I love, so that I can do more of it. I totally get Michael Bay, why he has to keep making Transformers movies. Maybe he would tell you that he loves making them, but I can't help but deep down think he's just like, all right, I want to buy another house. I guess we make another Transformers movie. It's just and here's the script. Boom, boom, crash, crash, explosion, 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 hot girls. There's stuff that you just want to work so well. And critics love certain things, but the audience doesn't. And usually those are the ones that are more artsy and they have more stuff to it, maybe. Or maybe they're just dumb, and critics can sometimes be dumb. Let's just face it. But yeah, it's weird what the audience will like as a whole, and I'm kind of a slave to that to a certain degree. I can occasionally do a narrative campaign where I just don't care how it does, because I just want to do it. But for the most part, the ones that I put out need to do well, because that's how we make our money, right? So yeah, I agree. It would be cool to have a Space Marine or Imperial Guard campaign that was very character-based. Example, following a main character like Gaunt or Uriel Ventress. People seem to like those in books anyways. Still wants to see you return to Tomb King sometimes. Yeah, good luck. Not interested in fantasy, sorry. Exactly. Hi Matt, you guys do awesome work, and the Hunting the Fallen campaign may be your best work yet. Well, thank you. And I kind of agree. I think that's been a combination of so many things I've learned over the years, and I feel like it really is. I think a lot of the viewers, and it also helps that the Dark Angel lore is super cool and that Steve is super enthusiastic about it, that adds to it as well. I think a lot of the viewers really enjoyed the bolt action game on the channel. They did. I ran out and bought models right away, so I hope Warlord recognized the marketing you're doing for them. Is there any chance that bolt action could become a feature of the channel? Right now, the plan is to do it monthly. I've already talked about this, so I'll kind of leave it at that. Metal Michael, hello Matt. Hunting the Fallen is my favorite Crusade-style campaign so far. Thank you. Feels like you put a lot of work constructing the base, different factions fighting, and then dive into personalized stories later. From an outsider, it feels more time-consuming constructing the different missions and adjusting according to what Steve chooses. It definitely is. But it also deepens the value of the product, in my opinion. Will you continue this style for the other factions, or is this a Space Marines only? Oh no, this style I love. I'm gonna be experimenting with this style for a lot of campaigns, Age of Sigmar campaigns, more 40K. The plan is the next Age of Sigmar campaign will probably be something with the new Soul Blight. The next 40K campaign will be with Dave's Khorne Orcs. So still figuring out, I've been having some delays in getting those ready for various things, and I'm kind of frustrated by that, but we will hopefully see them soon. But yeah, no, I agree. I love that style. It's worked out so well, but it is a lot more work. I had to scrap a bunch of missions I had planned when Steve decided, wait, I gotta remember not all of them are out yet. No spoilers, no spoilers. Let's just say that some of Steve's decisions surprised me, and I'm like, oh, I never thought that he would do that repeatedly. And I'm like, if I just kind of force him to do these missions, which I had planned, and there's like half a dozen missions, I'm like, I feel like I'll just be shoehorning them in, or I'll be railroading him onto those, and he clearly is not interested in this side story. And I'm like, okay, scrap them. And there was a lot of work put into them. And this isn't Steve's fault. This is what I wanted. I wanted to be able to react to what Steve did. I had just tried to do as much prep work as possible. And I've experienced this too. I've dungeon mastered long enough to know that sometimes all your preparations get thrown out the window when the characters just don't show any interest in that. And you don't want to force them to do stuff they don't show interest in. And besides, the things that he chose to do, I found to be more interesting than what I had prepared. So then all of a sudden I was like scrambling and making a whole new set of missions based on his choices. And I'm like, so what would happen based on what he did? I'm like, oh yeah, I can see this being a consequence that I hadn't foreseen because I had figured he would do this. And got wrapped into the story. And all of a sudden I'm like, this story is even better now because if you're watching it, you can't help but see that there are consequences to what Steve decides to do. And those consequences really show. And when I say consequences, it's not always bad things, it's just things. Like clearly the story is reacting to what Steve does. And that's what I want. Really, that's what I want. I have an idea, like Steve can't stop everything from happening that's going to be happening, right? Like it's not like he can make these choices and now this part of the story won't happen. There's certain things that are going to happen regardless. But you need to let the player have ownership to be able to see that their actions made a difference in the universe they're playing in. I try to do that with D&D as well, right? Like I want our players to see the consequences of their actions, good and bad. You know, meet up with people that they rescued a long time ago and now they're a new ally, or finding that an enemy is now more powerful because of something they decided to do. These kind of things, like you want that. It's really good for the story and it's good for the players. They really get more invested. And I think Steve would agree with that. So yeah, you can look forward to more campaigns like that. Kavaraki, hi Matt, I'm wondering what is your top three favorite 40K armies for gameplay and in lore and why? Doesn't have to be connected. Well, that's easy. Tyranids and Genestealer Cults are the top two. Genestealer Cults would actually vie for the top position because they're more interesting, but I love the Tyranid lore so much and I'm just so deeply into it. The number three, I would say, Chaos has really grown on me. It's something that I never really cared about early in when I started 40K, which is why Dave became the Chaos guy and I was the Tyranid guy. Tyranids were more up my alley of the sci-fi that I wanted. I was a huge Zerg fan for StarCraft before they ruined them, and just made them a person leading a bunch of bugs rather than the horrifying alien entity that they were. StarCraft 2 was fine. The story was fine. It just went in a direction that was way different than what I thought I was going to do. Anyway, so putting that aside. So Tyranids and Genestealer Cults, Chaos, just like the idea of Chaos overall has become more interesting to me. But I don't know, I'd probably put Necrons as number three. They've got some really interesting lore now that and I know some people didn't like what Matt Ward did with the Necron and retconning out, and now they have personalities and drives and they're more people-like, but I find that makes it more easy to bring them into narratives. Because it's hard to bring Tyranids into the narrative campaigns, besides just being like, these guys are destroying everything, now stop them. To make them more interesting than that, right? There are ways, of course, but there's only a few ways. Whereas once you get Genestealer cults and Chaos cults, there's so many things you can do with that. Even Tau and Eldar. Eldar lore is really cool. I wish their model range looked better and wasn't so outdated. I really hope they get a fully fleshed out new model range sometime soon, because I love their lore and I'd love to do more with it. The models are just so boring to me that it's hard to really get behind that. So yeah, anyway. Last page. You know what? I think I'll be able to get through all of them. Let's see. Oh, well, I've got 5 more minutes, but either way, let's just finish these last questions. It's probably going to be lots of repetition by this point anyways. That's usually what happens, right? Duke Spoon was wondering, what is your first ever Games Workshop product? Wait. Oh, I think you copied and pasted your question, because I already answered that. Josh E. Grey Knight. Greetings from the UK, Matt. I have one serious question and one silly question. 1. My favorite faction is Grey Knights. I have noticed there seems to not be much love for the Emperor's most pure warriors at Mini Wargaming. Have you or anybody else at Mini Wargaming considered using them? Not really. Right now, they're not in a good spot. Having said that, I think we're going to see some updates for them in the future. There's been some hints at that. 2, Matt, your voice is hypnotic. Have you considered releasing an audiobook of you reading the dictionary? Thank you for your hard work. Yes, I think the world is ready. Squid17, Matt, awesome work on your campaigns. Huge fan of them all. Thank you. Any plan for a new campaign where it's a small squad of 5 to 6-ish guys that level up and get new gear instead of the Crusade mission, kind of like Deathwatch? Definitely. I want to do another Deathwatch campaign or something like that, where because I have some really good ideas for how to make that work even better than the previous Deathwatch campaigns. But no current plans of when that's going to happen, because I'm currently working on these next 2, which I just mentioned. And I don't like to plan too far ahead. I like to have a big list of ideas, because I want to work on what inspires me, but also there's like the somewhat frantic release schedule of Games Workshop, which can throw things off and be like, oh, okay, well, if that's going to come out, then that inspires me to do this, or there's a new Crusade system for this, and all that kind of stuff. J Dwarf 90, hello Matt, hope you and everyone there is doing well. I'm curious, with Steve having no interest, will Bolt Action be a game? Okay, I already talked about that. Yes. GBC 343, Matt, I hope you are well in the nicer weather for which we are now given. Yeah, it's getting nicer. Question, with the vaccine rollout ramping up, it's probably inevitable that things will start opening up again at some point. Well, at some point they better. Any plans for Mini Wargaming when this happens? Yeah, the plans are to continue trying to do what we were doing before. Run events, have people here for battle reports, that kind of stuff. And how will you go about the bunker going forward? You know what, ask me again in 5 years, because then I'll actually know what the heck is going on. Because right now I'm not even thinking about it, because there's nothing I can do about it. And once it happens, we're going to be trying all sorts of crap, and we'll see what sticks, and then we'll continue doing more of that. Also been hearing some big things about Stormground lately, the new AOS PC console games. Any thoughts yet? I haven't really taken a look at that, so no, sorry. Pellinor, Matt, new silver member. Thank you so much. That's awesome. When is the Mini Wargaming app coming? Please play more Iron Jaws. Love your War Chanter antics. It's something that we've thought about doing, and we've even talked to a company to do it, but we've just been too busy to really do it. I know that we don't have to be the ones to make the app, but there's still a lot of back and forth, and you got to be ready. And as the web developer, I've got to be ready to do my end of things, because their API will interact with our website. So I've got to create I basically have to create the API. Sorry, our API will interact with their app, so that it's kind of agnostic to the app and can be used in other things too. That way, if we ever decide to do an Apple TV app or all these different kind of apps, that API is already there, and that makes everything a lot easier. So I don't know yet. Demon666, Matt, GW has been updating the 40k armies by giving them more flavor, example, doctrines, protocols, etc. What would you like to see in the other 40k armies like Custodes, Nids, and Tau? Books that haven't been updated. Well, Nids, I've talked about this in the Open Vault from last week. I'd love to see them show off their adaptations more. I love what they did in Blood of Baal with the adaptive physiologies. I feel like that's a step in the right direction, letting me just choose a unit and give it this thing. It doesn't have to be free, though. I don't mind. I would love to see, okay, here's what I said on the last Open Vault. Look at the Carnifexes and Hive Tyrants, and look at how many upgrades you can give them. That's the old style kits, right? Where they had lots of bits. I want that. I want my Haruspex to have tons of options. And that way he can be like a Haruspex that's good at this, or a Haruspex that's good at that. I love the adaptive physiologies. I hope they expand on that so I can use them more, and maybe pay command points or points to do so. I'm fine with that. Hive fleets are weird, and I'm not a big fan of the having these very specific hive fleets. Like, why is Hive Fleet Behemoth able to re-roll charge rolls. Are you telling me that that's all they care about is getting the charge? It's like that's a whole hive fleet, right? So I'd love to instead be like, you're able to have maybe more adaptations within it. Like you look at Sisters of Battles and they have Sacred Rites, which is there's 6 kind of upgrades to your army, and you get to choose it before the game begins. So you've already seen your opponent's list, you already know what the scenario is, and then you can adapt. You can be like, well, now which one do I want? And you can choose to roll for 2 of them randomly or just pick one. And I love that because it's like, oh, I'm playing against Harlequins? Well, I'm not going to bother with the one that gives me an extra armor penetration on 6s. I'll instead go for this one. And that feels like an adaptation that the Tyrannid should be able to have, right? Not Sacred Rites or that list exactly, but the fact that like I look over at my opponent's army and I can do a tiny bit of tailoring. You know, within reason, of course. I don't want it to be like now they're always overpowered because, you know, I'm up against Chaos. Okay, now I reroll all my hits against Chaos. I don't mean that. I just mean like, oh, there's lots of Psychers over there. Okay, so I'm going to implement my adaptation that lets me be a little more anti-Psyker. You know, nothing breakable or breaking to the game, but enough to show how they hyper-evolve and adapt so quickly. That's what I want to see for the Tyranids. Custodians and Tau, I don't know. They just need new rules. Custodians are fine. They do fine. But Tau are so bad. I don't know why they're so bad. Is it just points cost? Is it because their ballistics go 4 up? I don't just want the escalation to make them, you know, all that kind of stuff. But it's like they obviously need a new codex. So I'm not quite sure what to do about those. Because those ones, the Tau sets, you know, you can have that make sense. I like to build your own stuff as well. So thank you so much for all of your questions. Remember, next week is Josh. Leave your comments below for him. Whew. Thanks so much for watching and all your support. Happy wargaming.